It's day 7 of the ongoing search for a missing 4-year-old boy who vanished from a remote Outback station in South Australia.
A little boy's smiling face, one a shattered family is so desperately hoping to see again. This photo of 4-year-old Gus, released by his family 6 days since he was last seen on a remote mid-north homestead.
Considerable police resources and searches have been undertaken for the last 7 days, throwing absolutely everything we can in an effort to try and locate Gus safely and safe and well and alive. The search for Gus has probably been one of the largest, most intensive searches for a missing person conducted in South Australia in recent times.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head,
A 4-year-old lad, they just don't disappear into thin air. They have to be somewhere. So our job is to try and find which way he's gone.
And as the days roll on, some military backup rolled in.
Well, a week has passed. There's no new news, really. There's no real updates. According to the Daily Mail, at this point, no trace of Gus has been located. No tangible pieces of evidence, such as footprints, a hat or clothing, have been located to identify any direction of travel to assist these searches. According to the Daily Mail, hundreds of searchers have scoured the red dust and scrub, but the only trace of Gus is a single footprint discovered about 500 meters from the property's homestead. That alone is strange. Like, why is there one boot print in an island of dirt? I mean, how did that boot print get there? Why are there not other boot prints? That alone is kind of strange. Gus was last seen wearing a grey broad-brimmed hat, a blue long-sleeve shirt with a minion picture from Despicable Me on the front, light grey pants and boots. Police still believe that Gus wandered off and was not taken, as the only people who travel on the nearby road are station owners.
Family of a little boy missing in the state's arid outback has been told to prepare for the worst.
In this analysis, I'm going to talk about my feelings in terms of accident versus foul play, as well as share some of my recommendations for this search. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. I'll also be putting up another video on Charlie Kirk, the number 5 clue everyone missed a little bit later today. And let's get started.
Whilst we've all been hoping for a miracle, that miracle was not eventuated. In the last 48 hours, despite the professional advice, it being unlikely that Gus would have survived, we have maintained and in fact increased the effort. Unfortunately, at no point has there been any significant evidence that has enabled us to really focus in a direction for our search.
This really is turning into a head scratcher, isn't it? It's at this point where we really have virtually nothing to go on that the temptation begins to jump to conclusions. But that is something that is quite odd here. There's nothing to go on. It really is astonishing that in this day and age, with all of our gadgets, all of our technologies, that something as simple as a child disappearing can be so confounding. But is this an accident or is it foul play? Well, let's deal with the first possibility, accident. At this stage, I do still think the likelihood here remains something accidental, but the foul play needle has begun to move slightly. So what is my recommendation? I would say just in general, in terms of the search,
try harder.
48 Defence Force personnel hitting the ground, bolstering the SES, police, water units, trail bikes, Polair and local volunteers already trawling this terrain.
it's tough to see how they can try harder than what they have been trying. But there must be a way that they can be more effective in whatever they're doing. And so what is my recommendation besides trying harder? Well, in terms of some of the more obvious aspects to consider, the first is to consider what locals know and what locals are saying. If Gus did fall into a hole, that would make him effectively disappear. So one would want to look at the nearest holes to the homestead. So maybe it's about looking differently. Is there a way to look underground? According to the Daily Mail, one person commented saying, I would be more worried about the unmarked wells and mines he may have fallen into. That's the talk among the locals. The state's northeast pastoral district is dotted with mines and wells from a bygone era, well over 100 years ago, and many of the region's station owners are still stumbling across them to this day. So that's an area where there's confusion, a lack of knowledge, is that there are these old mines and holes in the ground all over the place. They were used as water sources for livestock and also for those chasing the gold dream back in the day, like this one. Now, the second issue, which I mentioned in the previous video, is to focus resources on the home and surroundings. To their credit, the investigators have already done this. They've apparently returned 3 times to search the house and outbuildings. According to the Daily Mail, yesterday afternoon we had another review of our search, and we've actually gone back to the property and searched it now for the 3rd time, just in case he's secreted or hiding somewhere around the property. In general, I can't really fault the police strategy, except perhaps that they ought to have brought in the local tracker a lot sooner. Police have continued to search a 3-kilometer radius from Gus's last known whereabouts. That all seems to be in order. Now, the third issue I would look at is local predators in the area. Have any lambs been taken? October is the lamb season after all. One thing that's hard to miss intuitively is that the little boy is approximately the size of some of the animals on the farm. And since he was wearing grey clothing and had blonde hair, grey clothing being a grey hat and grey trousers, it's possible some roaming animal mistook him for a sheep. Now, Gus was last seen, as we know, wearing a grey broad-brimmed hat and light grey pants. Now, what counts in Gus's favour is that if he did wander off, that hat is going to provide important protection against the sun. And as some have already commented, farm children tend to be more resilient in these sorts of situations. There are also other children who went missing in Australia who survived surprising stretches of time, like Robert Bogacki. He went missing for 12 days with no water in Broome, so dehydration-wise, Gus wouldn't be doing it at a fast rate compared to other times of the year. What about foul play, though? Unfortunately, at this stage, we have to consider other possibilities. The absence of evidence is also evidence, and in this case, the absence of evidence could be a sign of something intentional, something we just don't know. The absence of evidence is starting to feel like it could be suspicious. It's difficult at this point not to turn our attention to something that has been unusual from the start. Where are the boy's parents? We know Gus was staying with his grandparents, but what are the relationship dynamics in the home? Who is in the home that's not biological family? Who are the workers on the farm? And what's Gus's backstory? How did he end up on the farm in the first place? And where is his mummy? Beyond a certain point in a missing person search, certain aspects become harder, while some become easier. If the poor child is deceased, the smell will become easier to detect, and I still think the focus needs to be using scent, not sight, and the best tracker dogs need to be brought to the area. The fact that dogs have apparently been used with no result strongly suggests foul play. This is assuming they've used really good dogs and the dogs have done all they can. If that's the case, it's possible something is going on here that we simply don't know. Because all things being equal, if he did wander off, you'd expect the dogs to be able to follow that scent. Another area to look into is to bring a historian and or geologist to examine the theory of the holes, the mines. Ground penetrating radar is another option. It's just a different way of seeing. Unfortunately, I think we've also reached the time in terms of the story where you're going to start to need to question those people in whose custody the boy was left quite vigorously. A polygraph would also be a useful way to go, if anything, just to exclude involvement in something nefarious. Unfortunately, as time goes on without finding Gus, the people who were in the area at the time now become possible suspects in a missing child investigation, and they need to be ruled out. I say that nevertheless while maintaining that at this point the odds still favor an accidental disappearance. The only good news with the foul play scenario is if he was taken, that may actually raise his odds of still being alive. Meanwhile, the ongoing reticence of the family remains interesting. Family friend Bill Harbison issued a statement on the family's behalf earlier in this week. He said, "Gus's absence is felt in all of us, and we miss him more than words can express. Our hearts are aching, and we are holding on to hope that he will be found and returned to us safely. At this time, we kindly ask for privacy as we focus all our attention on supporting the search and working closely with the police." Well, now they will be required to speak to the police and work even closer in terms of cooperating and providing the police with more information, more background, more context. Well, I'll be continuing to cover this developing story, but for now I'm not going to take it further than that. Look out for the next episode on the Charlie Kirk assassination, which will be coming out later today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.